Into Openline, and if you are just joining us on Openline, we're glad to have you along on this great evening. I tell you, we were talking earlier, great fall evening, and if you've been thinking about some of those legal questions that you've been wanting to call an attorney, ask those questions, this is exactly where you can do that here on Openline with Ask an Attorney. We're talking to Kevin Kennedy, one of the top attorneys in the state of Tennessee. If you do have one of those questions, all you have to do is very easy. That number is on your screen, 737-7587. All right, let's go back to the lines right now. Bill is on the line with us. Bill, good evening. We're glad you're joining us on Openline. Do you have a question for Kevin?
Yes, I have a question. Kevin, with this Camp Lejeune issue,
yes,
the veterans that are involved with that, they have a direct route to Camp Lejeune for their claim, and I think half the attorneys around the world are trying to get the business to do that.
Yes.
So, in your opinion, is it better to go through a lawyer, or is it just good to go directly to Camp Lejeune?
Excellent question. I told you I just got back from a week in Las Vegas with the best mass tort trial lawyers in the nation, perhaps in the world. You know what number one subject was out there? Camp Lejeune. So we're going to go back to my initial statements, very elementary. Always get a lawyer. And you say, why? Because you've got an advocate that can advance your cause. There's going to be some questions. These claims are against the government. We've got some of those cases. And the negligence, of course, here's the pile of money over here the U.S. government has set aside. They finally yielded and said, we know that there was contamination that went in the water, and as a result, many people developed all kinds of various cancers. So then you're in Pier 1, Tier 1, Pier 2, Tier 2, how do you get in those categories? You need a lawyer, because you know the other side is always going to say, just like I said earlier, oh, that was caused from something else. You can't prove this. Your family had a history of cancer. So we already know how the arguments are going to go. And if you don't have an advocate that is skilled in that, then people will take advantage. So I always, on this one, I want to encourage anybody that's got that to call the large, like you said, they are blasting the nation because they know that these cases are valuable. They're going to help these families that have suffered tremendously and will continue to suffer.
All right. Thank you so much for calling in there, Bill. All right, let's go back to our lines right now. I think Carol is on the line with us. Carol, we're glad that you called. Do you have a question for Kevin?
Yes. I called earlier, and this was about the ID theft situation.
Yes.
And the problem I have is that I don't remember who the person was. I remember what she looked like, and, you know, her characteristics are completely different than mine, but I was wondering if you have any idea how I might to go about trying to find this person, and who may not even be alive.
Yes, and I understand that is always a problem, and many times those crimes might not ever become solved. You know, we have 3 credit bureaus. I would notify them that this is a fraud alert. So that puts that in the system, and there may be other victims that would have the same circumstance out of that same area, that they constantly have investigators to hunt down fraud, wire fraud, any kind of fraud, and try to get to the bottom of it. The main thing is that you say, I don't owe this. These credit collectors would say, well, we've got this bill, but it's a lot of bluff. Who knows? Somebody can say, you have a $125 bill that you didn't pay 8 years ago. Well, remember, we've got a statute of limitations that would protect you. What is the statute? And then you would resist. So I'm telling you, go. The squeaky door will always get the oil. You go, report that, see what they will tell you to do, and keep pursuing it. But I wouldn't pay it, because it is fraud.
All right, great. Carol, we're glad that you called back and got clarity on that. All right, right back to the lines right now. Bobby is on the line with us. Bobby, good evening. Do you have a question for Kevin?
Yeah, I got a question about a will.
Okay.
I'm 70-something years old, and I got 2 kids. if I pass away without a will it go divided between the two kids?
Okay, well, there's a few other questions. If you have a wife, then the wife can go separate from the will in the state of Tennessee, and she can take a 1/3. So people can say, well, I'm going to write my will to all of these. Well, a wife can still move away from the will and says, hey, I still want to claim my 1/3. So a skilled lawyer knows what to do and how to do it and try to help you wiggle through that.
All right, good to know. Bobby, we're good. Glad that you called in this evening. Absolutely. Okay, back to the lines again. Jackie is on the line with us. Jackie, we're glad that you called in. Do you have a question or a comment for Kevin?
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
I was wondering, okay, I was stopped for, someone said, the police officer said that I didn't stop completely at the stop sign.
All right.
And when I did, I don't know. He, okay, long story short, when I got the police report, he said that I was coming from the east side and I was coming from the west side. I was wondering, is it any way that I can prove that? Because on his dash cam, he has my car coming from the east side, but I was not coming from the east side. I was coming from the west.
Yeah. Well, we see this every day. There are mistakes in accident reports all the time. It's a common thing. You can contact the police officer and tell them that that is wrong and try to prove to them. And many times they will just correct it because of human error. Remember, everybody makes mistakes. If you're human, that's the 3% error, and that's where the lawyers become so effective. When they say, well, I've got this 100%, Kevin, remember, the skilled lawyer said you don't have them 100% because there's always what we call the margin of error. Another thing I'd like to say to you, when you say, well, the police officer stopped me, they said I didn't come to a complete stop. The truth is that's an interpretation. Did I come to a stop? You know, some people say, well, you got to stop and then count 1, 2, 3. Then you go. Well, there still could be some misinterpretation. So what? If you stopped 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and he said you didn't stop. Well, here we go. Don't fight them in the streets. Fight them in the courtroom. And I'll say this, many times when you get that ticket, you can go to court because the officers don't show up a lot of times and the court just dismisses it. You don't pay the court costs. You didn't get one of those point systems on your license. So use your best judgment.
All right, a lot of good advice right there. Jackie, we're glad that you called in on that. All right, let's go back to the lines. Carl is on the line with us. Carl, good evening. Do you have a question or a comment for Kevin?
Yes.
Go right ahead, Carl.
No, say it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was injured on a construction site. Yes.
Okay.
I was injured on a construction site back in July.
Yep.
But I don't work for that particular company. I work for another company. I was signed to work there, and they told me they're going to pay the hospital bill, medical bill, and all that stuff.
Right.
Because a scaffold fell on me from another company who was doing work, and it broke a rib and punctured a lung. So I had to spend the night in the hospital, but they keep still getting bills.
Oh boy. Okay, I'm going to tell you what you got to consider doing. You know, when you're on the job and you're in construction, that's probably going to fall under what's known as the Tennessee Workers' Comp Law, because that's an exclusive remedy. You're hurt on the job. So we have a whole department with the state of Tennessee, the Tennessee Workers' Compensation Department, and you make your claim. If they don't pay, you can file a complaint. That's why they have so many people there to help people in your situation. Doesn't cost you. So you call them and say, hey, look, they're not paying my bills. And so they will move down on that company and they'll get their attention. I never said, you know, when we're making complaints to all these governmental agencies, I never said you'll get the money. I did say there are people that are going to help you. And in your circumstance, they're going to probably see those bills are paid or they can suspend their license.
Great. So, and just for Carl, one more time, Kevin, so who would he call? That's the
Tennessee Workers' Comp Commission in Nashville. Try to get one of the investigators, tell them what your complaint is, and tell them the names, and they can take it from there.
All right, a lot of help. Thank you so much, Carl. We're glad that you called in, and we hope that that will help you get that solved. You know, I wonder, too, a lot of times, like in Carl's case, would it have helped him if he would have just, again, pulled out his phone and recorded,
Sure.
you know, asking, saying, are you going to take care of this? You're going to pay these bills?
What is the insurance company? Do you have the policy number? Are y'all with Equitable? Do you have a representative on the claims adjuster? And so many people say, well, I didn't even know all that. The more you know, the more you'll grow. And if you don't, there's a host of people that will take advantage of you. And so where does an 18-year-old kid learn this? He didn't learn it in high school.
Right.
And he didn't go to college. He's on the construction side. Hey, man. And then if you don't watch out, time runs. That company's out of business. And so then we're hung with these bills and you have to file a bankruptcy or whatever. I gave him good advice. You learn, you pursue it, and with all vigor, and make sure they cover it.
Absolutely. And let me ask you too, talking about, I'm often fascinated by this though, taking your camera out, you know, and saying what can you record, what can you not record. But let's say, you know, because often we get people calling in, they're having disputes with their neighbors.
Yes.
If there is a dispute with the neighbor, is it okay to go ahead right there?
Yes.
Do you need to tell them that you're going to record this?
Well, that is a dispute in some, now we're in the state of Tennessee. So some places say, well, you can't do this without them knowing. So you need to be aware of what state you're in. You know, this show that we put together, it ends up on YouTube. It goes all over the world. And so with that caveat, I would say yes. If we had, and you might even do a little if it was you and I say, Chuck, get your camera, and then we would deal with it. So I'm on guard. And here, I want to say this. 20 years ago, I used to preach to my lawyers. The camera is always on. The microphone is, can I get an amen?
Amen.
And so, you know, we're at a TV set talking on camera, off camera. I'm telling the world, the camera's always on, the micro. And if there's something that you don't want broadcast, don't say it. Don't do it.
Good advice. All right, we're going to the lines once again with Esther. Esther, we're glad that you called in. Do you have a question for Kevin?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead, Esther. Nice to talk to you.
Nice talking with you. Okay, I went to a lawyer's office to make my will, and I gave him all the information. He wrote it down. He charged me $75, and then they told me that they would get it prepared. So I went down there, and they were out of the office. And then I called, and every time I called, I didn't get an answer. And then I finally went down there several times, as a matter of fact. And I was in the parking lot, and there was a woman just driving away from the office, and she stopped so I could talk to her. And she said that he had retired and was in the process of retiring, and that he, you know, I would have to come back a certain day, and they would help me out. So I said, well, I really just want to pick up what I left him, you know, so I can get somebody to take this. And so she said, well, just come back and we'll get it for you, and gave me a time to do it. So I went back to get it. Well, they couldn't find it. And they kept looking, and then they said, well, we don't know where he put it. And I said, well, I've got to have it because I've got to get this will done. I'm 82 years old. I've got to get it done.
Wow, Esther, that is unbelievable what you've shared with us. But I know it's true. I believe, you know, I say, well, this is unbelievable, but I do believe every word you just shared, Esther. It gets back to what we kind of talked about a little earlier. Kind of know who you're doing business with. Are they responsible? Are they reliable? What is their reputation? And if you didn't have a good feel, don't do business with them. And so I like to always do the who, what, when, where, and how. Okay, how much is the will? When will you have it ready? Can I pay you now? Okay, and then I'm on it. Does that mean that Kevin couldn't be ripped off? all of us can be ripped off at any time. But if you pursue it, it's less likely. I'm going to pay it. How many times? Well, can you get it done in a day, 3 days? I'll be here this morning. And then do we have a good understanding? If you don't get it done, do I get my money back? And even then, can you still get ripped off? Sure you can. So I'm telling you, be vigorous about that, because probably some lawyer is going to take over that law business, and they'll be responsible and say, okay, we'll do your will, ma'am, and go right on.
So if someone else took over that law firm, she could go in and say,
sure,
yeah.
Because nobody really wants to see anybody taking advantage of. And if they did, well, that doesn't really speak very well of them to begin with, and I would be shocked if they did.
All right, well, Esther, keep pursuing. So again, great advice as always, Kevin. I think we need to take a short break. We've got one more segment coming up. If you do have those questions, make sure you get online with us just as soon as possible. 737-7587 is the number, and we'll be back right after this.